The air in the office felt heavier than usual, like it was holding its breath. Ethan Parker stood outside his boss's glass-walled office, clutching a crumpled note in his pocket that listed all the reasons he deserved a raise. His heart pounded louder than the hum of Manhattan traffic 20 floors below. Ethan, 26, had spent 3 years at Sterling and Holt, a mid-sized advertising firm in New York City. He'd clawed his way up from intern to junior copywriter, pouring late nights and weekends into campaigns that won clients over but never seemed to win him the recognition he craved. His bank account was a constant reminder of his stagnant $45,000 salary, barely enough to cover rent in his shared Brooklyn apartment. Today, he decided, was the day to change that. He knocked, and Lucas Holt, the 28-year-old creative director and youngest partner at the firm, looked up from his desk. Lucas's sharp blue eyes met Ethan's, and a faint smile curved his lips. "Come in, Ethan," he said, his voice smooth but unreadable. Ethan stepped inside, his palms slick with sweat. Lucas leaned back in his chair, the city skyline framing him like a painting. "Close the door first." Ethan hesitated. The glass walls already made the office feel like a fishbowl, and closing the door seemed to seal him into something bigger than he'd expected. He did it anyway, the soft click echoing in his ears. Lucas gestured to the chair across from him. "So, what's on your mind?" "I've been here 3 years," Ethan began, his voice steadier than he felt. "I've delivered on every project, stayed late, brought in clients. I think I've earned a raise." He slid the note across the desk, his carefully rehearsed points now reduced to bullet points on a wrinkled page. Lucas picked it up, his eyes scanning the words. Then he set it down, leaned forward, and folded his hands. "You're right. You've done great work. But a raise isn't just about work." His voice dropped, softer now, almost intimate. "It's about trust. And I need to know I can trust you completely." Ethan's stomach twisted. Trust. He'd never missed a deadline, never leaked a client pitch. "What do you mean?" he asked, his throat dry. Lucas stood and walked to the window, his silhouette sharp against the afternoon light. "There's something I haven't told anyone here. Not the partners, not HR. But I've been watching you, Ethan. You're different. You see things others don't." He turned, his gaze piercing. "I'm going to tell you something that could ruin me. But first, I need to know you're in. All the way." Ethan's mind raced. This wasn't about a raise anymore. Lucas's words carried a weight that felt personal, almost dangerous. He thought of the rumors whispers about Lucas's private life, his late-night meetings, the way he seemed to keep everyone at arm's length. Ethan had always admired Lucas's charisma, his ability to command a room. But now, standing in this enclosed space, he felt like he was teetering on the edge of something he couldn't name. "What are you asking me to do?" Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. Lucas stepped closer, close enough that Ethan could smell the faint cedar of his cologne. "I'm asking you to listen. To keep a secret. And maybe, just maybe, to help me carry it." Ethan's pulse thundered. He'd come for a raise, but now he was being pulled into something far bigger. Something that could change everything. The office clock ticked, each second stretching into eternity. Ethan thought of his life outside these walls as roommates' dirty dishes, the student loans that haunted his inbox, the quiet nights spent wondering if he'd ever feel like he belonged anywhere. Lucas was offering him a chance to step into a different world, one where he might finally matter. But at what cost? "Tell me," Ethan said, his voice firm despite the tremor in his hands. "I'm listening." Lucas's eyes softened, a flicker of relief passing through them. He sat back down, his fingers drumming lightly on the desk. "I'm not who everyone thinks I am," he began. "And neither are you." Ethan froze. He'd spent years hiding parts of himself, his small-town Ohio roots, his struggles with his identity, the way he'd learned to keep his head down to avoid questions about who he loved. He'd never told anyone at work he was gay, not because he was ashamed, but because he couldn't afford to stand out. Not when he was already scraping by. Lucas leaned closer, his voice barely audible. "I know what it's like to hide, Ethan. To wear a mask every day. I've been doing it my whole life. But I'm tired. And I think you are too." Ethan's breath caught. Was Lucas saying what he thought he was? The room felt smaller, the air thicker. He wanted to ask 100 questions, but all he could manage was, "Why me?" "Because," Lucas said, his eyes locking onto Ethan's. "You're the only one I've ever wanted to tell." The words hung between them, heavy with possibility. Ethan's mind spun, torn between fear and a strange, electric pull toward Lucas. This wasn't just about a raise anymore. It was about trust, secrets, and a connection that felt both dangerous and inevitable. "I need time," Ethan said finally, his voice shaking. "To think about this." Lucas nodded, his expression unreadable again. "Take it. But don't take too long. Some secrets don't wait." Ethan left the office, his note still on Lucas's desk, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and something he hadn't felt in years, hope. Ethan stumbled out of the office, the city's pulse vibrating through the glass walls of Sterling and Holt. His mind was a storm. Lucas's words, his piercing gaze, the weight of a secret he hadn't yet heard but already felt pressing against his chest. He took the subway back to Brooklyn, the rumble of the train doing nothing to drown out the question looping in his head. What did Lucas mean? Back in his cramped apartment, Ethan tossed his keys onto the counter, ignoring the pile of dishes his roommate, Jake, had promised to wash. He sank onto the couch, staring at the peeling paint on the ceiling. Lucas knew he was gay. How? Ethan had been careful, deflecting questions about dating, keeping his personal life locked away. But Lucas's words, "I know what it's like to hide," had cracked something open inside him. He pulled out his phone, tempted to search Lucas's name, but stopped. Whatever Lucas was hiding, it wasn't the kind of thing you found on Google. Instead, Ethan replayed their conversation, each word laced with a subtext he couldn't quite grasp. Lucas wasn't just his boss. He was a mystery wrapped in a tailored suit, a man who seemed to carry the weight of the world behind his easy smile. The next morning, Ethan arrived at the office early, his nerves frayed. He'd barely slept, haunted by the memory of Lucas's closeness, the cedar scent of his cologne. As he settled at his desk, his coworker Maya dropped by, her usual grin in place. "You look like you saw a ghost," she teased, tossing a pen at him. "Late night." "Something like that," Ethan muttered, forcing a smile. Maya was one of the few people at work he genuinely liked, but he couldn't tell her about Lucas. Not yet. The day dragged, each email and meeting blurring into the next. Ethan kept stealing glances at Lucas's office, but the glass walls revealed nothing. Lucas was in meetings all morning, his silhouette moving with purpose, shaking hands with clients, laughing with the other partners. It was the Lucas everyone knew, charming, untouchable. But Ethan had seen something else yesterday, a vulnerability that made his heart ache. At 4 p.m., Lucas's assistant pinged Ethan's inbox, meeting with Lucas at 5. His office. Ethan's stomach flipped. He spent the next hour pretending to work, his fingers hovering over his keyboard while his mind raced. When the time came, he knocked on Lucas's door, his pulse hammering. "Come in," Lucas called. Ethan stepped inside, closing the door without being asked this time. Lucas was standing by the window again, his back to Ethan, the city sprawling below. "You thought about it?" he asked without turning. Ethan swallowed. "I have. But I need to know what I'm signing up for." Lucas turned, his eyes searching Ethan's face. "Fair enough." He gestured to the chair, and Ethan sat, feeling like he was stepping into a spotlight. Lucas leaned against the desk, his posture relaxed but his expression serious. "I'm gay, Ethan. I've never told anyone at this company. Not my family, not the partners. No one." The words hit Ethan like a wave. He'd suspected, maybe even hoped, but hearing it out loud was different. It was real. "Why keep it a secret?" Ethan asked, his voice soft. "This is New York. People are open." Lucas laughed, a bitter edge to it. "Are they? My father's a pastor in Georgia. My brother's running for state senate on a family values platform. If they knew, I'd lose them. And this firm, half our clients are conservative brands. If word got out, I'd be a liability." Ethan's chest tightened. He knew what it was like to hide, to shrink himself to fit other people's expectations. Growing up in Ohio, he'd learned to keep his head down, to smile through questions about girlfriends he'd never have. But Lucas was different, had power, success, a life most people envied. And yet, he was just as trapped. "I'm sorry," Ethan said, the words feeling inadequate. "But why tell me now?" Lucas's gaze softened. "Because I'm tired of carrying it alone. And because I see you, Ethan. The way you work late. The way you deflect questions about your life. I know what that feels like. And I think we could help each other." Ethan's breath hitched. There was something in Lucas's voice, hope. Maybe. Or something deeper. "Help each other how?" he asked. Lucas hesitated, then stepped closer, his voice low. "I want to be honest with someone. Just one person. And I want it to be you. In return, I'll make sure you get that raise. More than that, I'll mentor you, get you on the big accounts. You deserve more than what you're getting." Ethan's mind spun. A raise, a promotion, a chance to finally climb out of the hole he'd been stuck in. But this wasn't just a deal, it was personal. Lucas was offering him a piece of his truth, and Ethan wasn't sure he was ready to carry it. Or to share his own. "I need to think about it," Ethan said, standing. "This is a lot." Lucas nodded, his expression unreadable. "I get it. But don't wait too long. Secrets have a way of slipping out." Ethan left the office, his head buzzing. Outside, the city was alive with noise, horns, chatter, the pulse of a million lives colliding. He felt like he was standing at a crossroads, one path leading to safety, the other to a truth he wasn't sure he could handle. But as he walked toward the subway, one thought burned brighter than the rest. Lucas had chosen him. And that, more than anything, made him want to say yes. Ethan spent the weekend in a haze, Lucas's words looping through his mind like a song he couldn't shake. He wanted to be honest with someone. Just one person. And I wanted to be you. It was more than a confession, it was an invitation. One that felt both thrilling and terrifying. By Sunday night, Ethan had made up his mind. He'd say yes, not just for the raise, but because he couldn't stop thinking about the way Lucas had looked at him, like he was seeing Ethan for the first time. Monday morning, Ethan arrived at Sterling and Holt with a fire in his chest. He found Lucas in the break room, pouring coffee, looking effortlessly polished in a navy blazer. "Lucas," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. "I'm in." Lucas's eyes lit up, a smile breaking through his usual composure. "Good. Meet me after work. My place. We'll talk." Ethan nodded, his heart racing. Lucas's place. It felt like stepping over a line he couldn't uncross. The rest of the day was a blur of meetings and deadlines. But Ethan's mind was elsewhere, imagining what Lucas's apartment might look like, what secrets he'd share. When 6 p.m. rolled around, Lucas texted him an address in the West Village, along with a simple, "See you at 8." Ethan took the subway, the city's lights blurring past like his thoughts. Lucas's building was a sleek brownstone, the kind Ethan could never afford. He buzzed the intercom, and Lucas's voice crackled through, "Come on up." The apartment was everything Ethan had imagined modern, minimalist, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson. Lucas greeted him in jeans and a black sweater, a far cry from his office persona. "Wine?" he offered, holding up a bottle of red. "Sure," Ethan said, trying to mask his nerves. They sat on a leather couch, the city glowing outside. Lucas poured 2 glasses, then leaned back, his eyes studying Ethan. "So," he said, "you're in. That means you get the truth. All of it." Ethan took a sip, the wine sharp on his tongue. "I'm ready." Lucas exhaled, like he'd been holding his breath for years. "I grew up in a small town in Georgia. My dad's a pastor, fire and brimstone type. I knew I was gay by the time I was 12, but I learned fast to keep it quiet. Got out as soon as I could, came to New York, built this life. But it's a house of cards. One wrong move, and it all comes down." Ethan listened, his heart aching. He knew that fear, the constant calculation of what to say, who to trust. "What about your family?" he asked. "Do they suspect?" Lucas shook his head. "They think I'm the golden son. My brother's the one they watch always in the spotlight, always performing. I'm the one who got away clean. But I'm not clean. I'm just hidden." Ethan set his glass down, his hands trembling. "I get it. I'm from Ohio. Small town, big church. I came out to my mom when I was 18. She cried for a week, then pretended it never happened. I haven't been home in years." Lucas's eyes softened. "I'm sorry. That's rough." "It's fine," Ethan lied, his throat tight. "I built my own life here. But it's lonely sometimes." Lucas leaned closer, his voice low. "It doesn't have to be." The air between them shifted, charged with something unspoken. Ethan's pulse quickened as Lucas's hand brushed his, a fleeting touch that felt like fire. He wanted to pull away, to keep things safe, but he didn't. Instead, he met Lucas's gaze, seeing the same longing he felt mirrored back. "I've wanted to do this for a while," Lucas murmured, leaning in. Their lips met, tentative at first, then deeper, a kiss that felt like a confession. Ethan's mind screamed to stop, to think about the consequences, but his heart didn't care. For the first time in years, he felt seen. They pulled apart, breathless, the city humming outside. "This is dangerous," Ethan said, his voice shaky. "You're my boss." "I know," Lucas said, his eyes searching Ethan's. But I don't care. Not anymore. They talked for hours, sharing stories of their pasts, their fears, their dreams. Lucas told Ethan about his first crush, a boy in high school he'd never dared approach. Ethan admitted he'd never had a real relationship, too afraid to let anyone in. By the time Ethan left, the sky was dark, and his heart was full. But as he walked back to the subway, doubt crept in. Lucas was his boss, a man with power and secrets. What if this was a mistake? What if Ethan was just a way for Lucas to feel less alone? A temporary fix. The thought gnawed at him, but so did the memory of that kiss, the way it had felt like coming home. Back at work, Ethan tried to focus, but every glance at Lucas's office sent his heart racing. They stole moments, a brush of hands in the hallway, a shared look during a meeting, but kept their distance, aware of the eyes around them. Ethan's raise came through, a 20% bump, and Lucas started pulling him into bigger projects, true to his word. But it wasn't enough to quiet the fear that this whatever it was couldn't last. Weeks passed, and Ethan's life became a tightrope walk between exhilaration and dread. He and Lucas met in secret late nights at Lucas's apartment, quiet dinners and out-of-the-way restaurants, stolen kisses and empty stairwells. Each moment felt like a rebellion against the world that had forced them to hide. But the thrill came with a cost. Ethan's work suffered. He missed deadlines, his mind too consumed with Lucas to focus. Maya noticed, cornering him one day. "What's going on with you?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. "You're distracted. And you keep disappearing." "Just stressed," Ethan lied, hating how easily the words came. He couldn't tell her the truth, not about Lucas, not about himself. But the secrecy was eating at him, a constant reminder of the life he'd left behind in Ohio, where lies had been his shield. Lucas, too, was fraying. He'd always been polished, unflappable, but Ethan saw the cracks, late-night texts about his family, his brother's campaign gaining traction, the pressure to maintain his perfect image. One night, over takeout in Lucas's apartment, he confessed, "My brother called today. Asked me to come to a fundraiser. Said it'd look good for the family." "Are you going?" Ethan asked, his fork hovering over his plate. Lucas shook his head. "I can't. If I go, they'll ask questions. About my life. My choices. I'm not ready for that." Ethan reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining. "You don't have to be ready. Not yet." Lucas smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "What about you? You ever think about going back to Ohio? Telling them who you are now?" Ethan's chest tightened. He thought about his mom, her tear-streaked face, her silence after he'd come out. "I don't know if I can. They made it clear I wasn't welcome unless I changed." Lucas squeezed his hand. "You don't have to change. Not for them. Not for anyone." The words were a balm, but they couldn't erase the fear that this whatever they had was fragile. Ethan wanted to believe in it, in Lucas, in the possibility of a life where he didn't have to hide. But the world outside Lucas's apartment was relentless. At work, rumors started swirling. A junior designer caught them lingering too long in the break room, and whispers followed. Ethan overheard a coworker joke about Lucas's favorites, and his stomach churned. What if someone found out? One afternoon, Lucas called Ethan into his office. "We need to be careful," he said, his voice low. "People are talking. Nothing specific, but we can't slip up." Ethan nodded, his heart sinking. What if they find out? Lucas's jaw tightened. They won't. I'll make sure of it. But Ethan wasn't so sure. That night, he lay awake in his apartment, staring at the ceiling. He loved Lucas at least. He was falling for him, but love didn't erase the risks. If their relationship came out, Lucas could lose his career, his family. Ethan could lose his job, his fragile foothold in this city. And yet, the thought of walking away felt impossible. The next day, disaster struck. Ethan was in a client meeting when his phone buzzed with a text from Maya. Check your email. Now. He slipped out, his heart pounding, and opened his inbox. An anonymous email, sent to the entire creative team, with a grainy photo of him and Lucas leaving Lucas's building together, their hands brushing. The subject line read, "What's really going on at Sterling and Holt?" Ethan's blood ran cold. He forwarded the email to Lucas, his hands shaking. Within minutes, Lucas texted back, "My office. Now." Ethan rushed to the glass-walled office, closing the door behind him. Lucas was pacing, his face pale. "Who sent this?" he demanded. "I don't know," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "What do we do?" Lucas stopped, his eyes meeting Ethan's. "We deny it. Say it's nothing. A coincidence." Ethan's stomach twisted. "Lie." "It's not lying," Lucas said, but his voice lacked conviction. "It's protecting ourselves." Ethan wanted to argue, to say they shouldn't have to hide, but the fear in Lucas's eyes stopped him. He nodded, but the weight of the lie settled over him like a shroud. They agreed to keep their distance at work, to act like nothing had happened. But as Ethan left the office, he felt the walls closing in. The secret that had once felt like a bond now felt like a trap. That night, Ethan sat alone in his apartment, the anonymous email open on his laptop. He didn't know who'd sent it, but one thing was clear: someone was watching. And they weren't done. The anonymous email hung over Ethan like a storm cloud. He and Lucas avoided each other at work, their interactions reduced to curt nods and professional emails. The office buzzed with whispers, and Ethan felt eyes on him everywhere: in the break room, at his desk, in the elevator. Maya tried to ask him about it, her voice gentle but probing. "That photo, is there something you're not telling me?" she said one lunch break. Ethan forced a laugh, his throat tight. "It's nothing. Just bad timing." She didn't push, but her eyes said she didn't believe him. Ethan hated lying to her, hated the way the secret was poisoning everything. At night, he and Lucas met in secret, but even those moments felt tainted. Lucas was paranoid, checking his phone constantly, convinced someone was digging into his life. "If this gets out," he told Ethan one night, his voice raw, "it's not just my job. It's my family. My brother's campaign. Everything." Ethan wanted to comfort him, but his own fear was growing. He'd seen the way the partners looked at him now, their smiles tight, their questions pointed. He started noticing things: a coworker who lingered too long near his desk, a client who asked if Lucas was reliable. The world they'd built together was cracking, and Ethan didn't know how to hold it together. One evening, Lucas invited Ethan over, his voice urgent. "We need to figure this out," he said as Ethan stepped into the apartment. Lucas was pacing, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "I think I know who sent the email." Ethan's heart skipped. "Who?" "Mark," Lucas said, his jaw tight. "The senior copywriter. He's been gunning for my job since I got promoted. I caught him snooping in my office last week." Ethan's mind raced. Mark was ambitious, ruthless, always quick with a backhanded compliment. It made sense. What do we do? Ethan asked. Lucas set the glass down, his eyes fierce. We confront him. Tomorrow. Together. Ethan hesitated. Confronting Mark could backfire, could make everything worse. But Lucas's determination was infectious, and Ethan nodded. Okay. Together. The next day, they cornered Mark in the conference room after hours. Lucas didn't waste time. We know it was you, he said, his voice low and dangerous. The email? The photo? Mark's eyes widened, but he recovered quickly, a smirk spreading across his face. Prove it. Ethan's stomach churned. Mark's confidence was unnerving, like he knew something they didn't. Lucas stepped closer, his voice steady. If you're behind this, you'll regret it. Mark laughed, leaning back in his chair. Careful, Lucas. People might start wondering why you're so defensive. Got something to hide. Ethan's blood ran cold. Mark knew. Maybe not everything, but enough to be dangerous. They left the conference room, the air thick with tension. Lucas was shaking, his fists clenched. He's bluffing, he said, but Ethan wasn't so sure. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept replaying Mark's smirk, the way he'd looked at Lucas like he held all the cards. By morning, Ethan's fear had turned to resolve. He couldn't keep living like this, hiding in the shadows, letting someone like Mark control their lives. He texted Lucas, we need to talk. Your place. Tonight. When Ethan arrived, Lucas looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. What is it? He asked, pouring them both wine. I can't do this anymore, Ethan said, his voice breaking. The secrets, the lies. It's killing me. Lucas's face fell. What are you saying? I'm saying we need to stop hiding. Tell the truth. About us. Lucas froze, his glass halfway to his lips. You don't know what you're asking. If we come out, it's over. My career, my family, and what about us? Ethan cut in, his voice rising. What about me? I'm tired of being your secret. I deserve more than that. Lucas's eyes glistened, and for a moment, Ethan thought he might cry. I know, Lucas whispered. But I'm not ready. I can't lose everything. Ethan's heart broke, but he stood firm. Then maybe we're not ready for each other. He left, the door closing softly behind him. The city swallowed his footsteps as he walked away, tears burning his eyes. He loved Lucas, but love wasn't enough if it meant living a lie. For the first time, Ethan felt the weight of his own truth, and he wasn't sure he could carry it alone. The days after Ethan's ultimatum were a blur of pain and clarity. He threw himself into work, avoiding Lucas's office, ignoring the texts that lit up his phone. Each one was a plea. I am sorry. Can we talk? I need you. But Ethan couldn't respond. Not yet. He needed to figure out who he was without Lucas, without the secret that had defined them. At home, Jake noticed the change. You okay, man? He asked one night, tossing a beer across the couch. You look like someone ran over your dog. Ethan forced a smile. Just work stuff. Jake raised an eyebrow but didn't push. Ethan was grateful for that. He wasn't ready to tell anyone about Lucas, not even Jake, who'd always been accepting. But the silence was suffocating, and Ethan found himself wondering what it would feel like to be free, to live without fear. At Sterling and Holt, The tension was palpable. Mark's smirk followed Ethan everywhere, and the whispers grew louder. One afternoon, Maya pulled him aside. "I don't know what's going on," she said, her voice firm, "but you're not yourself. And Lucas looks like a ghost. If you're in trouble, you can tell me." Ethan's throat tightened. He wanted to tell her, to spill everything, but the fear of exposure stopped him. "I'm fine," he lied, hating himself for it. That evening, Lucas cornered him in the parking garage, his eyes wild. "Ethan, please. I can't lose you." Ethan's heart ached, but he held his ground. "You're not losing me because I'm leaving. You're losing me because you won't let me in." "Not really." Lucas grabbed his arm, his grip desperate. "I love you," he said, the words raw and unfiltered. "Isn't that enough?" Ethan's eyes burned. "No. Not if it means hiding who we are." He pulled away, leaving Lucas standing alone in the dim light of the garage. The drive home was a blur, tears streaming down Ethan's face. He loved Lucas, but he couldn't keep living in the shadows. Not anymore. The next day, everything unraveled. Another anonymous email hit the company's inboxes. This one with a clearer photo: Ethan and Lucas kissing outside Lucas's building. The subject line: Sterling and Holt's dirty secret. Ethan's stomach dropped as he read it, his hands shaking. This wasn't just a warning. It was a declaration of war. Lucas called an emergency meeting with the partners, and Ethan was summoned. The conference room felt like a courtroom, the partners' faces grim. Lucas stood at the head of the table, his voice steady but his hands trembling. "The email is a lie," he said. "A malicious attempt to smear me and Ethan. We're colleagues, nothing more." Ethan's heart sank. He wanted to scream, to tell the truth, but Lucas's eyes begged him to stay silent. So he did, nodding along as Lucas spun a story of professional friendship, of late-night work sessions. The partners seemed skeptical but didn't press. For now, the lie held. But Ethan couldn't live with it. That night, he made a decision. He drafted an email to the entire company, his fingers trembling as he typed. "I'm gay. I've been in a relationship with Lucas Holt. We didn't want to hide, but we felt we had to. I'm done hiding. I hope you'll respect our truth." He didn't send it. Not yet. Instead, he texted Lucas, "Meet me at your place. We need to end this the right way." Lucas was waiting when Ethan arrived, his face pale. "What are you doing?" he asked, seeing the resolve in Ethan's eyes. "I'm sending the email," Ethan said. "I'm telling the truth. For both of us." Lucas's eyes widened. "You can't. It'll ruin me." "It might," Ethan said, his voice steady. "But it'll free us." They argued, voices rising, tears falling. Lucas begged him to wait, to think about the consequences. But Ethan was done waiting. He hit send, the email flying out into the world. Unstoppable. The fallout was immediate. By morning, Ethan's email had spread through Sterling and Holt like wildfire. His inbox overflowed with messages, some supportive, some angry, most confused. The partners called another meeting, and this time, Ethan and Lucas were both summoned. The air in the conference room was thick with tension, the partners' faces a mix of shock and disapproval. "Explain yourself," Margaret, the senior partner, demanded, her eyes fixed on Ethan. Ethan took a deep breath, his heart pounding. "I told the truth. I'm gay. Lucas and I are together. We didn't want to hide, but we were scared. I'm not scared anymore. Lucas sat beside him, silent, his hands clenched in his lap. Ethan glanced at him, hoping for support, but Lucas's face was unreadable. Margaret turned to him. Lucas, is this true? Lucas hesitated, then nodded. Yes. It's true. The room erupted in murmurs. Margaret's face hardened. This is a professional environment. Personal relationships, especially between a manager and a subordinate, are unacceptable. And the publicity, do you have any idea what this could do to our clients? Ethan's stomach churned, but he stood his ground. I understand the risks. But I'm done living a lie. If that means losing my job, so be it. Lucas finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. I'm with Ethan. I've spent my life hiding who I am. I'm done. The partners exchanged glances, their silence heavy. Margaret leaned forward. We'll need to discuss this. You're both suspended, effective immediately, pending a review. Ethan and Lucas left the room, the weight of their decision settling over them. Outside, Lucas grabbed Ethan's hand, his grip tight. You didn't have to do that, he said, his voice breaking. You could have let me handle it. No, Ethan said. I did it for me. For us. They walked through the city, hand in hand, the world around them buzzing with life. For the first time, Ethan felt free, even if it came with a cost. They didn't know what would happen next: job loss, client backlash, Lucas's family finding out, but in that moment, it didn't matter. They were together, and they were honest. That night, Lucas got a call from his brother. Ethan sat beside him, listening as Lucas explained, his voice steady despite the tears in his eyes. I'm gay, Tom, he said. I've been hiding it my whole life. I can't anymore. The call ended with a long silence, and Lucas set the phone down, his hands shaking. He didn't say much. He told Ethan. But he didn't hang up. That's something. Ethan pulled him close, their foreheads touching. It's a start, he said. Over the next week, the fallout continued. Some clients pulled their accounts, citing reputational concerns. Others sent messages of support, praising Ethan and Lucas for their courage. Maya texted Ethan, "You're a badass. I've got your back." Even Jake, who'd finally heard the whole story, showed up with a six-pack and a grin. About time you lived your truth, man. But the real test came when Lucas's father called. Ethan sat in the next room, hearing only Lucas's side of the conversation, quiet, pained, but resolute. When Lucas emerged, his eyes were red, but he was smiling. He's angry, he said. But he said he still loves me. That's more than I expected. Ethan took his hand, their fingers intertwining. We're going to be okay, he said, and for the first time, he believed it. The suspension lasted 2 weeks, but the review brought surprising news. The partners, after heated debates, decided to reinstate Ethan and Lucas, with conditions: no more secrets, no favoritism, and mandatory HR training. It wasn't perfect, but it was a chance to start over. Ethan took it, grateful for the opportunity to keep his job. Lucas, too, returned, his confidence tempered but intact. They moved forward together, navigating the new reality of their open relationship. At work, they kept things professional, but outside, they were free. They went on real dates, movies, dinners, walks through Central Park, holding hands without fear. Ethan started visiting Ohio again, rebuilding his relationship with his mom, who was slowly coming around. Lucas's family was harder, but his brother reached out, inviting him to a quiet dinner, a small step toward reconciliation. Mark, the suspected email sender, was quietly let go after an investigation revealed he'd been leaking client data to a competitor. The truth about the emails never fully surfaced, but Ethan didn't care. The weight of the secret was gone, replaced by a lightness he'd never known. One evening, a year after that fateful meeting in Lucas's office, Ethan and Lucas stood on the roof of Lucas's building, the city sparkling below. Ethan had moved in a month earlier, their lives now intertwined in ways he'd never imagined. Lucas turned to him, his eyes soft. "I was terrified that day you asked for a raise," he said. "But it was the best thing that ever happened to me." Ethan smiled, his heart full. "Me too." They kissed, the city their witness, no longer hiding from the world. Ethan had come for a raise, but he'd found something far greater: love, truth, and the courage to be himself. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was theirs, and that was enough.